Hello, and welcome to the Techstrong AI podcast. I'm Amanda Razani, and with me today is Mike Vizard. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Always happy to be here.
Same. We have a long lineup of topics today, so let's start with the OpenAI Exodus. We have yet another person defecting from OpenAI. This time it's John Schulman. He said he's leaving for arch rival Anthropic. And as we've said, lots of people have been leaving. There's been so much craziness in this area. So can you share what's going on here?
Yeah, I'm not a huge believer in the great man theory of history. So I don't really buy into this whole notion that, one individual kind of drives everything and, the way you might read and say the business press. I think sometimes we forget that these companies are made up of many people who step up over time. And so, we'll see. But it's pretty clear also that there's just a lot of dissension floating around OpenAI, and I'm not quite clear how that ultimately impacts their progress. And it seems like arch rivals such as Anthropic are gaining ground, and the folks are voting with their feet, I guess, in some instances. It's hard to read the tea leaves here, but I would just kind of make the note here that says I wouldn't bet on any one of them right now over the others. I would kind of say, hey, maybe we should just keep track of all of this and start to treat these things as interchangeable. I mean, a lot of times they're exposing an API that you're just calling, and from a certain level, a lot of applications, that's all they need. I mean, if you want to go build and customize your own LLM using their stuff and put it in some sort of enterprise app, great. That may require a little more lock-in, but I feel like maybe we're just too much wrapped up on the LLMs and not enough on the, shall we say, the use cases or how we're building the apps in a way that we're not so dependent upon any one LLM. So maybe the drama doesn't need to be nearly as high.
Yes, and I would like to point out, too, it's not like this is the only company this happens to. This happens all the time. I think, I'll say it's just business. People leave companies and go to other companies all the time for better offers, or perhaps they like what's happening in that company a little bit more, like you said.
Yeah, there's a lot of burnout in startup companies, too, and people get tired of the stress and the strain, because a lot of the times early on, before anybody heard of you, you were working with a limited number of resources and you're trying to make something happen, and that takes a toll, too.
Right, absolutely. So moving on, we have a few different articles, one in Techstrong AI and one in DevOps.com that shares a survey. And it says that AI is rapidly expanding and that it's imperative to adopt AI for the future if you want to succeed. So what are your thoughts here?
Well, we've talked about this in the past where there's a lot of, shall we say, chagrin right now about the amount of revenue that's being generated by all these AI startups. And yet, if we go look at the average enterprise, I mean, they may not be consuming massive amounts of compute cycles yet, but they will be. And they're clearly investing, and they're clearly doing the research and looking for the use cases that make the most sense. The issue is it's not always readily apparent how something that is probabilistic and, makes the best guess at something can be inserted into a business process that always has to be deterministic. And this is going to take a little bit of time, and maybe we'll come up with some additional use cases for things that are best guess, and that'll be helpful. But I think we got it in our heads somehow or other that this was going to be a magic switch that would just turn on, and revenue dollars would be flowing like crazy. And it's difficult to say that that's going to happen at this point. I think it's going to have a profound impact. I'm just not entirely sold on the notion that this changes our way of life tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, AI is just one tool, and certainly it's a great one if you have a use case for it. And I will say, if you have a use case for it, these articles do explain why it's imperative to go ahead and implement. However, again, if you don't just try to jump on the AI bandwagon.
Mm-hmm. And be certain somebody out there is experimenting with something that's going to impact your business model, and they're probably going to be using AI to drive some portion of that. And I will say, if you're not in the game today, trying to get in the game a year from now will be a lot harder. You need to develop the muscle mass and the skills and the expertise required to play. So I don't think you can afford to kind of sit on your hands and just go, we'll wait and see how all this turns out. You got to be in it to win it, as they say.
Yeah. But there is something to be said, I guess, from the companies who are sitting back to see how it plays out for a little bit and to develop those use cases to determine what solutions they need to solve before they implement.
Right. Look before you leap, for sure.
Yes. All right. So then we're going to talk, though, about existential threats, because while we talk about the amazingness of AI, at the same time, we have so many articles, one on Techstrong AI and one on Security Boulevard, that ask, is AI a friend or a foe? It seems to be the debate since it came on the market. Some people say it's a big threat. Other people say it's the best thing since sliced bread. I think it's a little bit of both. What are your thoughts?
Well, that knife we used to cut that bread you just referred to probably has two sides to it. So yes, it's definitely going to be a threat, and it's definitely going to be a help. It will be a threat because the bad guys are going to use AI. They're going to create more malware faster. It's going to be better malware. It's probably going to be more targeted malware, and they're going to try to hijack our LLMs and steal our sensitive data, if not the entire LLM. These are all true facts and probably already happening somewhere. As one friend of mine once said, the thing about cybersecurity is, if you can imagine it, it means somebody else is trying it. But it's also a friend. People who are in the cybersecurity space especially will benefit. I would rather be in cybersecurity with AI than without it. That's for sure. And I think most job functions are going to be similar. I think at some point we're all going to be like, well, yeah, I mean, why? I wouldn't take a job that wouldn't give me access to AI tools to do it. That would be crazy, right? I mean, why make my life harder? I'm hoping that, we always think about these things within the context of our jobs per se, but theoretically, there could be more companies in a given space if the cost of producing something is lower, and we might see all kinds of entrepreneurial efforts from because things that used to require 100 people to do might be done by 5. Well, if that's the case, then maybe there'll be, instead of 20 companies doing something, there'll be 100, because the cost of delivering that service profitably will be different. But we can all kind of play in that space in a way that's more aggressive. So I kind of think about it as it's most definitely going to be a friend to everybody on some level. It's just a question of how you're going to use it and where. And how you're doing your job today might be different, and where you're doing your job tomorrow will most likely be different, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with any new technology is a potential new threat using that technology. But as they say, fight the AI with the AI.
There you go.
All right. So now we're going to talk about AI at the edge. We have an article on Techstrong AI says, taking the brains to the brink, running AI on IoT devices with edge computing. Combining AI with edge computing is beneficial. And then it goes on to explain all the different ways that it can help with those edge devices. So can you share a little bit more?
Yeah, this is happening. And we're already seeing it in the mobile space, right? We're seeing Apple in particular talk about running algorithms right on the handheld, so I don't have to do a round trip to the cloud. And the IoT device is the same idea. Do we need GPUs everywhere to do that? Probably not. We need to train the AI model somewhere. And then we need to have some sort of processor unit capable of running the inference engines out at the edge, and we need to update those inference engines. Do we need data scientists to run all those inference engines at the edge? Probably not. I think we're going to see all this stuff move closer to the edge simply because we need the model to be where the data is and where it's being analyzed, and all this round-trip behavior to the cloud is probably, the laws of physics say that that's just going to be too slow. So as I kind of think it through at the end of the day, the AI inference engines, they're not like the AI models in the cloud that are, petabytes of data. They're much smaller. They can be run in terabytes in some instances, and they can fit on the latest and greatest processors optimized for the edge. I might argue that AI might have a bigger impact at the edge than anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen quite a few articles on this topic, and it does seem like a solution more business leaders are looking to.
Sometimes we get it in our heads that something is like massive when it's not. And we have our little prejudices about how things are going to be built and structured. Turns out, but they're usually not the case. And over time, the amount of compute engines that we need, going back to the mainframe, everything gets more efficient over time. So just because something requires a massive amount of GPUs and CPUs to accomplish today does not mean it's always going to be the case. And it certainly doesn't mean the inference engine is going to require it. I think we just need to open our minds a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, with that, we're going to talk about the last article, which says, this is actually an interview that you had, and it's about enhancing GPUs with, is it fission technology, Phison technology? Tell me a little bit more about this interview you had.
Well, this is about a technology that essentially puts a cache of memory between the application and the GPUs, and the idea is to make the usage of the GPUs more efficient. And in some instances, that can even be outside of the cloud. It could even be theoretically closer to the network edge. And the point here is that we're obsessed these days about the fact that we can't find GPUs and they cost a fortune, but there's other ways to skin this cat. And we can put different technologies in place, whether before we mentioned inference engines. Well, those things don't always need to run on GPUs. They can run happily on a variety of different classes of processors. And so I think, that's just one way to get after that. But the other instance is, well, okay, so let's say I do need GPUs, and I'm using GPUs because, well, they're a little bit better at parallelization than other processors. Okay, that's true. But I still need to maximize the utilization rates for those GPUs, and putting a lot of more efficient memory architectures is one way to go after that. So that's what this fellow is pointing out in that interview. And I think we have forgotten hardware over the years. We kind of went into the cloud, and we thought about it more as, well, yeah, that's something the cloud service providers are doing, and I get this instance and I don't have to think about hardware anymore. I think AI is about to make us think about hardware a lot more, because we're realizing how expensive it is. And this is just one example of how they need to reduce those costs.
Yeah, and at the foundation, at the ground level, is the hardware. So it is important.
Yeah, and I just don't think the economics of AI kind of work with just putting GPUs everywhere. It's just not going to happen. So we need to get a little more innovative in our thinking and understand, as the saying goes, the right horses for the right courses.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our podcast articles to share today. So what are your final thoughts?
It's easy to get discouraged sometimes with AI, because we all walked in with this sense of irrational exuberance, shall we say it? Now we're on the trough of disillusionment. Okay, great. Probably going to be on multiple cycles of that over the next few months. We're going to go from, woo, we can do this now. This will be great. And then we'll be like, oh, this is hard work. None of this stuff is easy. It just doesn't magically happen. And it requires a village of folks, really, when you think about it. I need not only data scientists, I got to have data engineers. I need some developers. I probably need a DevOps team. I also need the cybersecurity people. All this has to come together in a way that operationalizes this stuff. And I think that's where we are.
Time, patience, and perseverance.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you to our audience for tuning in. If you didn't catch last week's, it's there for you. And then again, let us know, what are you most interested in? Go check out these articles that we shared and send us your feedback. Have a great day.
See you all.